we keep marching forward, we'll end up reading all of Walden. That wasn't our intention. I thought we were just reading economy.
No,
it was more economical just to read economy.
I wanted to read the whole book.
Why the whole book? And why would you read the conclusion then? Like it. To like is to do. To do is to like. Previously, we had read, what had we read? About reading. Now we'll come to sounds. In Walden by Henry David Thoreau. And we've got a portable version of Thoreau. So, because it was easy to carry around back in the old days. So take him to the park. But while we are confined to books, through the most select and classic, do you think portable books became more accessible?
Absolutely.
So this was an innovation to the portable book, paperback book. So we got access through paperback books. Was more accessible than hard copy books from the library at Harvard. So we're taking advantage of a portable book. Most select and classic can read only particular written language which are themselves but dialects and provincial. We are in danger of forgetting the language which all things and events speak without metaphor, which alone is copious and standard. Much is published, but little printed. The rays which stream through the shutter will be no longer remembered when the shutter is wholly removed. No method nor discipline can supersede the necessity of being forever on the alert. What is a course of history or philosophy or poetry, no matter how well selected, or the best society, or the most admirable routine of life, compared to the discipline of looking always at what is to be seen? Yeah, we are saying if Thoreau was here, he'd figure out what happened to the birds. You were asking where are the birds? Where'd they go in winter and why aren't they singing? He would be out looking for them, but we seem to... Where do birds go when they sleep, and then where do they hide in the winter? Thoreau is out looking. Will you be a reader, a student merely, or a seer? Read your fate, see what is before you, and walk on into futurity. I did not read books the first summer. No, he didn't even read books, now he admits. I hoed beans. That was my dream, to hoe beans. To eat beans, at least.
Because he was busy that first summer.
I had read in, I just read that Pythagoras
He didn't allow beans to eat beans.
How could he? Why?
Took the beans out.
Why does he eat chickpeas, and why does
Maybe know that they cause gas and they smell.
Yeah, they said, if I quote.
No, they couldn't regulate. They couldn't slow.
No, remember, they said that Pythagoras did not eat beans, but here, this biographer, Porphyry, says that he had paste of barley and chickpeas. He had poppy seed and sesame, and he had breakfast. He had honey for breakfast. And here's what he says. As to food, his breakfast was chiefly of honey. At dinner he used bread made of millet, barley, or herbs, raw or boiled. Only rarely did he eat the flesh of sacrificial victims, nor did he take this from every part of the anatomy. When he intended to sojourn in the sanctuaries of the divinities, he would eat no more than necessary to still hunger and thirst. To quiet hunger he made a mixture of poppy seed and sesame, the skin of a sea onion, well washed until entirely drained of the outward juices, and the flowers of the daffodil and the leaves of mallows, of paste of barley and chickpeas, taking an equal weight of which, chopping it small with honey, of her made tussie, made it into a mass against thirst. He took the seed of cucumbers. Do the cucumbers have a seed? And the best dried raisins, extracting the seeds, and coriander flowers, and the seeds of mallows, mallow, mallows, dear, purslane, scraped cheese, wheat meal, and cream, all of which he mixed up with wild honey. This is Pythagoras. We're reading a Golden Chain. Why do we have a segue into that? Well, we talked about he hoed beans. So we went from his hoeing beans to Pythagoras. I did not read books the first summer. I hoed beans. Nay, I often did better than this. There were times when I could not afford to sacrifice the bloom of the present moment to any work, whether of the head or hands. I love a broad margin to my life. Sometimes in a summer morning, having taken my accustomed bath, I sat in my sunny doorway from sunrise until noon, wrapped in a reverie amidst the pines and hickories and stomachs, in undisturbed solitude and stillness. What's he doing? While the birds sang around or flitted noiselessly through the house, until by the sun falling in by my west window, or the noise of some traveler's wagon on the distant highway, I was reminded of the lapse of time. So he was able to just stop what he's doing. So on a moment's notice, he can sit still in solitude and stillness. So there's no one telling him he has to go to work.
Only himself. Okay.
I love a broad margin to my life. Does that mean wide flexibility? I grew in those seasons like corn in the night, and they were far better than any work of the hands would have been. They were not time extracted from my life, but so much over and above my usual allowance. I realized what the Orientals mean by contemplation. Now he's talking about contemplation. This is all very contemplative, really. And the forsaking of works, for the most part, I minded not how the hours went. He's not like counting his time. He just sounds like he's a Taoist or something. He's a Zen master or a Taoist philosopher. Just happens to be born in. The day advanced as if to light some work of mine. It was morning, and lo, now it was evening, and nothing memorable is accomplished. Instead of singing like the birds, I silently smiled at my incessant good fortune, as the sparrow had its trill.
She was a little nuts sometimes.
Sitting on the hickory before my door, so I might chuckle or suppress the warble which he might hear out of my nest. I think you can achieve some of this stuff by going camping. Well, my days were not days of the week, bearing the stamp of any heathen deity, nor were they minced with hours and fretted by the ticking of a clock. For I lived like the Puri Indians, of whom it is said that, quote, for yesterday, today, and tomorrow, they have only one word, and they express the variety of meaning by pointing backward for yesterday, forward for tomorrow, and overhead for the passing day. This is sheer idleness to my fellow townsmen, no doubt, but if the birds and flowers had tried me by their standard, I should not have been found wanting. A man must find his occasions in himself. It is true that the natural day is very calm, and will hardly reprove his indolence. I had this advantage, at least in my mode of life, over those who were obliged to look abroad for amusement to society and the theatre, that my life itself was become my amusement, and never ceased to be novel. It was a drama of many scenes, and without an end. If we were always indeed getting our living and regulating our lives according to the last and best mode we had learned, we should never be troubled with ennui. Troubled with ennui means you're like, follow your genius closely enough, and it will not fail to show you a fresh prospect every hour. Housework was a pleasant pastime. See, housework is pleasant. You should be a happy house worker. Remember how I said that housework can be just like going to the gym?
You'll come to something on that.
I do the ineffective, the non-optimal housewife.
And then you can enjoy a nice clean house if you go to the
No,
gym.
when you're not optimal, Tim, you have, like, say you have an object upstairs that belongs downstairs. So you find one and you run it down and put it there. And then, but you had more objects that belonged downstairs from upstairs. Instead of taking them all at once, you take them one at a time. So you work all the way upstairs, then you have one thing to clean and way down in the basement, so you run down and clean that, then you go up all the way back upstairs. So you run all over the place in the house cleaning, but you don't do it efficiently. You do it inefficiently. So you have a lot of movement. And so if I have to put away something, I have something to put away in the garage, I run all the way out and put it in the garage. And then I come back and I have something to put away somewhere else. And so that's highly inefficient. How could you do that? Well, I'd end up running around like a nut, bird with its head cut off. Like a Housework was a pleasant pastime. When my floor was dirty, I rose early, and setting all my furniture out of doors on the grass, bed and bedside, making but one budget, dashed water on the floor and sprinkled white sand from the pond on it, and then with a broom scrubbed it clean and white. By the time the villagers had broken their fast, the morning sun had dried my house sufficiently to allow me to move in again. Interesting, you can clean with the sun. Sunshine will disinfect things, so you could take it outside in the morning. Yeah. So you can take it outside in the sun to clean it. Yeah. Tried my house sufficiently to allow me to move in again, and my meditations were almost uninterrupted. He talks about his meditations. It was pleasant to see my whole house effects out on the grass, making a little pile like a gypsy's pack, and my three-legged table, from which I did not remove the books and pen and ink, standing amid the pines and hickories. Maybe he moved his table outside. He could almost write outside. They seemed glad to get out themselves, and as if unwilling to be brought in. I was sometimes tempted to stretch an awning over them and take my seat there.
Why did you do that?
I guess some campers, they have awnings and they pull a cloth.
Outside.
You could sit outside. They even can have a screened-in porch. Or you can have screened-in porch. I think you're going to want to go camping soon. It was worth the while to see the sunshine on these things and hear the free wind blow on them. So much more interesting, most familiar objects look out of doors than in the house. A bird sits on the next bough, life everlasting grows under the table, and blackberry vines run round its legs, pine cones, chestnut burrs, and strawberry leaves are strewn about. It looked as if this was the way these forms come to be transferred to our furniture, to tables, chairs, and bedsteads, because they once stood in their midst. My house was on the side of a hill, immediately on the edge of the larger wood, in the midst of a young forest of pitch pines and hickories, half a dozen rods from the pond to which the narrow path led down the hill. In my front yard grew the strawberry, blackberry, and life everlasting John's wort and goldenrod, shrub oaks and sandberry, blueberry and groundnut. Near the end of May, the sand cherry adorned the sides of the path with its delicate flowers arranged in umbels cylindrically about its short stems, which last in the fall weighed down with good-sized and handsome cherries, fell over in wreaths like rays on every side. I tasted them out of compliment to nature, though they were scarcely palatable. The stomach, the sumac, Arus galbra, grew luxuriously about the house, pushing up through the embankment which I had made and growing 5 or 6 feet the first season. Its broad pinnacled tropical leaf was pleasant, though strange to look at. The large buds suddenly pushing out large in the spring from dry sticks which had seemed to be dead, developed themselves as by magic into graceful green and tender boughs an inch in diameter, and sometimes as I sat at my window, heedlessly did they grow and tax their weak joints. I heard a fresh and tender bough suddenly fall like a fan to the ground, when there was not a breath of air stirring, broken off by its own weight. That's strange. In August, the large masses of berries, which, when in flower had attracted many wild bees, gradually assumed their bright, velvety crimson hue, and by their weight again bent down and broke the tender limbs. Can you imagine the berry leaves, branches broke from thick berries? Is that strange? To hear the branch break in that sort of quiet, that's a excellent quietude. Remember I wrote a poem about listening to the leaves fall? It was so quiet, and it was fall, and the leaves were cracking off and then falling through the air and then hitting the leaves on the ground. So first there was a crackle, then there was the crunch when they hit the ground. And the leaves, it's like a red maple or something. And it made this crackly sounds, and the leaf cracked off the stem. It was amazing. And you could only hear that with extreme quiet. As I sat at my window, I was sitting at the doorstep too in the morning. As I sit at my window this summer afternoon, hawks are swirling about my clearing. The tend-to-be of wild pigeons flying by twos and threes awart my view, or perching restless on the white pine boughs. Behind my house gives a voice to the air. A fish hawk timples the glassy surface of the pond and brings up a fish. A mink steals out of the marsh before my door and seizes a frog by the shore. The sledge is bending under the weight of the reed birds, flitting further hither and thither, and for the last half hour I had heard the rattle of railroad cars, now dying away, then reviving like the beat of a partridge conveying travelers from Boston to the country. For I did not live so out of the world as that boy who, as I hear, was put out to a farmer in the East, part out of town, but ere long ran away, and came back again, quite down at the heel and homesick. He had never seen such a dull and out-of-the-way place. The folks were all gone off. Why, you couldn't even hear the whistle. I doubt if there is such a place in Massachusetts now. Do you think there's any spots that are truly quiet now? Or they got traffic noise? Or airplanes flying over? In truth, our village has become a butt for one of those fleet railroad shafts, and over our peaceful plain its soothing sound is conquered. The Fitchburg Railroad touches the pond about 100 rods south of where I dwell. I usually go to the village along its castway and am, as it were, related to society by this link. The men on the freight trains that go over the whole length of the road bow to me as to our old acquaintance. They pass me so often, and apparently they take me for an employee, and so I am. I too would fain be a track repairer somewhere in the orbit of the earth. See, so they think that he is an employee of the railroad, so he just pretends like he is. Right? Just like when I'm in the park and they think that I'm young and too young to be retired. I just say that I'm retired military, and then it keeps them adequately afraid of me because they know I might be too tough for them to bother with. So I never bothered because they think he's retired military. But anyways, You know what they did in the movie, the show Dickinson? You're not going to like this. They mocked Thoreau a bit. They have his mother doing his laundry and stuff, and then saying he went home all the time, and that he wasn't really deep in the woods all alone in meditation, and he went home to mom's house.
I don't know if Emily knew Thoreau.
He walked home, and they have him meeting Emily Dickinson and all this stuff. It's just the Apple TV Dickinson show.
Oh, the book on biography.
You're gonna hate it. They have him like meeting Emily Dickinson, of course, and then they make up this stuff.
Anyway, you don't judge somebody because he went back to his mouth for only a couple times.
He went back every Sunday for lunch, and
you see the whole thing about him. You don't see one thing.
We could live in a woods behind where your mom is and have her just cook for us and do the laundry. And
too late for that.
We could make up a story about. We could write a Walden 2 book, Walden 3, since they have Walden 2. We could say how we lived in the woods, but then we'll have our laundry done, huh? And we could have fresh direct. And the whistle of the locomotive penetrates my woods of summer and winter, sounding like the scream of a hawk sailing over some farmer's yard, informing me that many restless city merchants are arriving within the circle of the town, and the adventurous country traders from the other side. As they come under one horizon, they shout their warning to get off the track to the other. Heard sometimes through the circles of about 2 towns, here comes your groceries, country, your rations, countrymen. Nor is there any man so independent on his farm that he can say them nay. And here's your pay for them, screams the countryman's whistle. Timber for long battering rams going 20 miles an hour across the country, against the city's walls, and chairs enough to sit all the weary and heavy, laden one that dwell within them. With such huge and lumbering civility, the country hands a chair to the city. All the Indian huckleberry hills are stripped. All the cranberry meadows are raked into the city. You think the countryside's raked up to serve the city? Up comes the cotton, down goes the woven cloth. Up comes the silk, down goes the woolen. Up comes the books, but down goes the wit that writes them. Down goes the woolen, up comes the books, but down goes the wit that writes them. What? Well, it's interesting what he's saying about the relation between country and city. The whistle of the locomotive penetrates my woods summer and winter, sounding like the scream of a hawk sailing over some farmer's yard, informing me that many restless city merchants are arriving within the circle of the town, or adventurous country traders from the other side. As they come under one horizon, they shout their warning to get off the track to the other. Heard sometimes through the circles of 2 towns, here come your groceries, country, your rations, countrymen. Nor is there any man so independent on his farm that he can say them nay. And here's your pay for them, screams the countryman's whistle. Timber like long battering rams going 20 miles an hour against the city's walls, and chairs enough to seat all the weary and heavy laden that dwell within them. With such huge and lumbering civility, the country hands a chair to the city. All the Indian huckleberry hills are stripped. All the cranberry meadows are raked into the city. Up comes the cotton, down goes the woven cloth. Up comes the silk, down comes the woolen. Up come the books, but down goes the wit that writes them. You think all the hustle and bustle damages your wit?
What goes down from the silk? Up goes the silk down.
Nothing. There, the silk, up comes the silk. This is just brought to the city.
And down goes what?
The woolen.
Woolen?
Wools. I don't know.
From the silk, you don't like wool?
It's just an expression. The hustle and bustle, he says, down goes the wit that writes them. You can't have any wit if you're in motion. If you're riding the train, you don't have any wit.
No, and after you ride the book, empty somehow. The wit is in the book.
But if you're in motion and your prana is jarred by action on the train and doing transactions with heavy materialistic lifestyle, then your wit goes down. Do you think you need stillness to be witty? You have to meditate for how long? You have to meditate 2 to 3 hours a day. Huh? Your wit goes, down goes the wit that writes them. You can't write a book unless you sit still. I can't write it on the train. When I meet... What?
It doesn't say that. It says how from the cotton, you have the cloth, somehow the cotton disappears. And from the book, when you write, the wit writes the book, and then you're empty in a way, so the wit is gone in the book.
Something about the country is swept up for the raked up for the city.
So comes the other the way.
All right, that's up for interpretation. This is an interpretive reading. Well, it's all up for interpretation.
No, that's what I understand.
Yeah. We all have a different interpretation. I don't have any. Don't know what I have. When I meet the engine with its train of cars moving on.
Your wit goes into your reading.
My wit went down already. I'm in the city, so down went my wit.
It goes into the reading. That's what you do.
Well, I'm not in the country, so my wit is declined.
It doesn't have anything to do with that.
Okay. When I met the engine with its train of cars moving off with planetary motion, or rather like a comet, for the beholder knows not if, with that velocity and with that direction, it will ever revisit this system, since its orbit does not look like a returning curve, with its steam cloud like a banner streaming behind in golden and silver wreaths, like many a downy cloud which I have seen high in the heavens, unfolding its masses to the light, as if this traveling demigod, this cloud propeller, would ere long take the sunset sky for the livery of his train. When I hear the iron horse make the hills echo with his snort like thunder, shaking the earth with his feet, and breathing fire and smoke from his nostrils, what kind of winged horse or fury dragon they will put into the new mythology I don't know. It seems as if the earth had got a race now worthy to inhabit it. Actually, there's a period because the sentence ended. I can rest now between them. If all were as it seems, and man made the elements their servants for noble ends, if the cloud that hangs over the engine were the perspiration of heroic deeds, or as beneficent as that which floats over the farmer's fields, then the elements and nature herself would cheerfully accompany men on their errands and be their escort. I watch the passage of the morning cars with the same feeling that I do the rising of the sun, which is hardly more regular. You know, people who used to watch trains. My uncle used to go and watch trains.
Now we watch too much already.
Why would you go and watch trains?
Because it was me.
The train of clouds stretching far behind and rising higher and higher, going to heaven while the cars were going to Boston, conceals the sun for a minute and casts my distant field into the shade, a celestial train, beside which the petty train of cars which hugs the earth is but the barb of the spear. The stabler of the iron horse was up early this winter morning by the light of the stars amid the mountains to fodder and harness his steed. Fire, too, was awakened thus early to put the vital heat in him and get him off. If the enterprise were as innocent as it is early, if the snow lies deep, they strap on his snowshoes, and with the giant plow a furrow from the mountains to the seaboard, in which the cars, like a following drill barrow, sprinkle all the restless men and floating merchandise in the country for seed. What is he talking about, the train? All day the fire steed flies over the country, stopping only that his master may rest, and I am awakened by his tramp and defiant snort. At midnight, when in some remote glen in the woods he fronts the elements encased in ice and snow, and he will reach his stall only with the morning star to start once more on his travels without rest or slumber. Do you know what he's talking about? Mm-hmm. Or perchance at evening I hear him in his stable blowing off the superfluous energy of the day that he may calm his nerves and cool his liver and brain for a few hours of iron slumber. If the enterprise were as heroic and commanding as it is protracted and unwearied.
I suppose it describes the speed of everything. Everything is like fast.
I don't know what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. I guess he just went off on a writing thing. Far through unfrequented woods on the confines of towns, where once only the hunter penetrated by day and the darkest night dark, these bright saloons, without the knowledge of their inhabitants, this moment stopping at some brilliant station house in town or city, where a social crowd is gathered, the next in the dismal swamp, scaring the owl and fox. The startings and arrivals of the cars are now epochs in the village day. Still talking about the train. Why is he obsessed over trains? Because he has to listen to it. They go and come with such regularity and precision, and their whistle can be heard so far that the farmers set their clocks by them, and thus one well-conducted institution regulates a whole country. Seems the railroads are driving the life. Have not men improved somewhat in punctuality since the railroad was invented? I remember in Germany they had the clocks that told you how many minutes till the train would arrive. And it was always on time. Do they not talk and think faster in the depot than they did in the stage office? Do they not talk and think faster? There is something electrifying in the atmosphere of the former place. I have been astonished at the miracles it has wrought, that some of my neighbors who I should have prophesied once for all would never get to Boston by so prompt a conveyance are on hand when the bell rings. Seems it's easier to go to Boston. To do things the railroad fashion is now the byword. You could actually take the high-speed train to Boston or Washington. What do they call that? Amtrak. To go to Boston or Washington, D.C. Do things railroad fashion is now the byword, and it is worth the while to be warned so often and so sincerely by any power to get off its track. There is no stopping to read the riot act, no firing over the heads of the mob in this case. We have constructed a fate, an atropos, that never turns aside. Let that be the name of your engine. Man, atropos, A-T-R-O-P-O-S. Men are advertised that at a certain point, hour, minute, these bolts will be shot towards particular points of the compass. Yet it interferes with no man's business, and the children go to school on the other track. We live the steadier for it. We are all educated thus to be sons of tell. The air is full of invisible bolts. Every path but your own is the path of fate. Every path but your own is the path of fate. Keep on your own track, then. Means you're going to say that thing about the Buddha or another, your own drum. What recommends commerce to me is its enterprise and bravery. It does not clasp its hands and pray to Jupiter. I see these men every day go about their business with more or less courage and content, doing more even than they suspect and perchance better employed than they could have consciously devised. I am less affected by their heroism who stood up for half an hour in the front line at Buena Vista than by the steady and cheerful valor of the men who inhabit the snow plow for their winter quarters, who have not merely the 3 o'clock in the morning courage, which Bonaparte thought was the rarest, but whose courage does not go to rest so early, who go to sleep only when the storm sleeps and the sinews of their iron steed are frozen. On this morning of the great snow, perchance, which is still raging and chilling men's bone, I hear the muffled tone of their engine bell from out the fog bank of their chilled breath, which announces that the cars are coming without long delay, notwithstanding the veto of a New England northeast snowstorm. And I behold the plowmen covered with snow and rim. Their heads are veering above the moldboard, which is turning down over their other the daisies and nest of field mice, like boulders of the Sierra Nevada, that accompany an outside place in the universe. Commerce is unexpectedly confident and serene, alert, adventurous, and unwearied. It is very natural in its methods withal, far more so than many fantastic enterprises and sentimental experiments, and had its singular success. I am refreshed and expanded when the freight train rattles past me, and I smell the stores which go dispensing their odors all the way from Log Wharf to Lake Champlain, reminding me of foreign parts of coral reefs and Indian oceans and tropical climes and the extent of the globe. I feel more like a citizen of the world at the sight of the palm leaf which will cover so many flaxen New England heads the next summer, the Manila hemp and coconut husk, the old junk gunny bags, scrap iron and rusty nails. This carload of torn sails is more legible and interesting now than if they should be wrought with paper into paper and printed books. Who can write so graphically the history of the storms they have weathered as their rents have done? There are proof sheets which need no correction. Here goes lumber from the Maine woods, which did not go out to sea in the last freshet, risen $4 on the 1,000 because of what did go out or was split up, pine, spruce, cedar, first, second, third, fourth quality, so lately all of one quality, to wave over the bear and moose and caribou, next round Thomaston's lime, a prime lot which will get far beyond the hills before it gets slacked. These rags and bales of all hues and qualities, the lowest condition of to which cotton and linen descend, the final result of dress of patterns which are now no longer dried up, unless it be in Milwaukee, as those blended articles, English, French, and American prints, ginghams, muslins, and gathered from all quarters both of fashion and poverty, going to become paper of one color or a few shades only, of which forsooth will be written tales of real life, high and low, and founded on fact. This closed car smells of salt fish, the strong New England and commercial scent reminding me of the Grand Banks and the fisheries. Who has not seen a saltfish thoroughly cleared for this world, so that nothing can spoil it, in putting the perseverance of the saints to the blush, with which you may sweep or pave the streets, and split your kindlings, and the teamster shelter himself and his lading against sun, wind, and rain behind it, and the trader, as a conquered trader once did, hang it up by his door or a sign which he commences business, until at last his oldest customer cannot tell surely whether it be animal, vegetable, or mineral, and yet it shall be as pure as a snowflake, and if it be put into a pot and boiled, will come out an excellent done fish for a Saturday dinner. Next, Spanish hides, with the tail still preserving the twist and the angle of elevation they had when the oxen that wore them were careering over the pampas of the Spanish main, a type of obscenity, obstinacy, and evincing how almost hopeless and incurable are all constitutional vices. I confess that, practically speaking, when I have learned a man's real disposition, I have no hopes of changing it for the better or worse in this state of existence. As the Orientals say, a cur's tail may be warmed and pressed and bound round with ligatures, and after a 12-year labor bestowed upon it, still it will retain its natural form. The only effective cure for such inveteracies as these tales exhibit is to make glue of them, which I believe is what is usually done with them, and then they will stay put and stick. There is a hogshead of molasses or of brandy, directed by John Smith, Cunningsville, Vermont, some traders among the Green Mountains, who import ports for the farmers near his clearing, and now perchance stands over his bulkhead and thinks of the last arrivals on the coast, how they may affect the price for him, telling his customers this moment, as he has told them 20 times before this morning, that he expects some by the next train of prime quality. It is advertised in the Cunningsville Times. Hmm. 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 Now where this ends, it's endless. While these things go up, other things go down. Warned by the whistling sound, I look up from my book and see some tall pine hewn on far northern hills, which has winged its way over the Green Mountains and the Connecticut, shot like an arrow through the towns. Yet within 10 minutes, and scarce another eye beholds it, going to be the mask of some great admiral. And hark! Here comes the cattle train, bearing the cattle of 1,000 hills. Sheepcots, stables, cowyards in the air, drovers with their stick, and shepherd boys in the midst of their flocks, all but the mountain pastures whirled along like leaves blown from the mountains by the September gales. The air is filled with the bleating of calves and sheep, and the hustling of oxen, as if a pastoral belly were going by. When the old bellwether at the head rattles his bell, The mountains do indeed skip like rams, and the little hills like lambs. A carload of drovers too, in the mist on a level with these droves now, their vocation gone, but still clinging to their useless sticks as their badge of office. But their dogs, where are they? It is a stampede to them. They are quite thrown out. They have lost the scent, and methinks I hear them barking. Behind the Peterborough hills, are panting up the western slope of the Green Mountains. They will not be in at the death. Their vocation, too, is gone. Their fidelity and sagacity are below par now. They will slink back to their kennels in disgrace, but perchance run wild and strike a league with the wolf and the fox. What about it? Don't look at it? So is your pastoral life, world past and away. But the bell rings and I must get off the track and let the cars go by. I think it's going to end here, sir, with the train passing. What's the railroad to me? I never go to see where it ends. It fills a few hollows and makes banks by for the shallows. It sets the sand a-blowing and the blueberries a-growing. But I cross it like a cart path in the woods. I will not have my eyes put out and my ears spoiled by its smoke and steam and hissing. That's the end of the railroad. Now that the cars are gone by and all the restless world with them, and the fishes in the pond no longer feel their rumbling, I am more alone than ever. For the rest of the long afternoon, perhaps my meditations are interrupted only by the faint rattle of a carriage or a team along the distant highway. We were talking about his interruption to his meditation by the train. So mostly it's just about his trying to meditate and woods with the train. Is that interpretive? Oh.
Meditation means contemplation.
So all he was doing was meditating and then listening to the train. So that's all that happened. I read the sounds of the train, the sounds of the commuter train, the sounds of amtrak going from Washington to the high-speed train to Boston. You want to take the train to Boston?
Yeah.
You can go by train. It costs about as much or more, probably more than the plane. We can go to Washington or to Boston.
But then we have to have the car.
You have to have a car. Not if you go to the center of town. I don't know. A car. All right, so we took the train to nowhere. Well, we didn't take the train. We just listened to the train. In Walden. Mm-hmm. Any comment? No. All right. That was mostly about the... Well, I finished 53 minutes, so... I was to stop it. We haven't read the entire journals. We have these journals. The ultimate Walden is the entire journals of Thoreau, 7,000 pages. It's the true Walden, actually. So we're reading the ordinary Walden. Well, I don't know.